Okay, so welcome everyone. I will call the meeting to order. This meeting has been advertised in accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act and is publicly accessible in accordance with law. Roll call, please.
Kevin,
Here.
Rocco, no. Dr. George,
Here.
Sarah, no. Maria, Rosemary,
Yes, here.
Esty,
Here.
Zainab,
Yes.
and Mr. Weber. No.
Okay, salute to the
Frank
flag.
is on his way.
Okay.
Before.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are going to go into executive session. It should be a relatively quick session. Just need to update the board on a few items for personnel. So I'll ask for a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion. I
Thank you.
will second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, so the one member of the public,
Waiting room?
we are going to put you back into the waiting room. As soon as we're done with the executive session, we'll bring you back into the meeting.
Okay, and then I pause the recording?
Yes.
Yes.
Pause. Back. Okay. So thank you very much for your patience. We're ready to move on with the regular portion of this meeting. So I'm going to move right along to the minutes, the approval of the regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Roll call, please.
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Zainab,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The executive session minutes for the June meeting.
Doesn't Zainab have to abstain? Or?
She doesn't have
No,
to,
she-
she's reviewed the minutes, you can still vote on
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion for the executive session?
I'll make it.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I imagine not on executive
No.
session. Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Zainab,
Yes. Well,
Rosemary,
Yes.
I would abstain, sorry.
okay. Esty.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to personnel. There are 4 items for personnel. So we'll start with the first one. Chris, if you don't mind reading off the first item.
Absolutely. So we have a motion to approve the employment of Manager of Informational Technology, Adam Pober, at the salary of $70,000 prorated for the balance of 2023.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Chris, should that also be prorated for any benefits, vacation, etc.?
Oh, no, this is, this one is on the hiring position,
Yeah,
the IT position. We haven't gotten to that one yet, Frank.
yeah, the entire thing for the IT position is prorated for 2023, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that the question? I thought you were talking
Thank you.
about Justin. Okay, sorry, Frank. Roll call?
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Zainab,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Thank you. Item D for personnel.
Okay, we have an approval of an additional 10% out of title pay rate for Trudy Doler, Lawrence Harbor Branch, retroactive to May 3, 2022.
Thank you.
I'll move it.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Zainab,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Chris, third item, item C.
Okay, we have the approval of the maintenance driver job description.
I'll move it.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
yes,
Mr. Weber,
yes,
Zainab,
yes,
Rosemary,
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Thank you. And the final item for personnel, Chris?
We have the establishment of 3 new positions, 2 of which are subdivided from one existing position. There are no job descriptions yet, but the board would be just moving to approve the existence and establishment of these positions. They are Manager of Adult Services, Manager of Youth Services, and Manager of Extended Patron Services.
Thank you. Do I have
I'll
a
move
motion?
it,
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call?
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
yes,
Mr. Weber,
yes,
Zainab,
yes,
Rosemary,
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for personnel. Under finance, item A, I did speak to Maria this afternoon. She has reviewed the bill listing in the amount of $271,922.69. I know she did have some questions, but they were all answered to her satisfaction. So she would recommend that we move this. Do I have someone to make a motion?
I'll make it.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Kevin,
Yes?
Dr. George,
yes,
Mr. Weber,
yes,
Zainab,
abstain,
Rosemary,
Yes.
Esti.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to old business. So we have one item here, Lawrence Harbor. I know you,
Kevin, just,
Yes.
Kevin, just, I
Yeah.
voted pass. Chris, am I incorrect? When you vote pass, are you not supposed to
Oh.
come back at the
Oh,
end? of the
yeah.
voting?
I don't think we heard it as passed. John,
I'm
so
sorry, I didn't hear
Well,
that.
that's what I voted.
You are correct.
Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry, let's go back to Dr. George.
Dr.
It's
George,
okay. When you come back to me, I'll vote no. And the reason is when I get a current budget, then I'll know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing when I'm comparing it to last year's budget.
Where do we stand with that,
What is
Chris?
that?
You are still, you still passed it 4-2.
Okay, so,
That's for the bill listing?
Yes,
okay, so it's a pass.
yes, it is.
Okay, let's move forward then to old business, Lawrence Harbor. An update on Lawrence Harbor, I know you sent out a little, additional to the director's report.
Yeah, I just sent out a little additional information for you all to consider. The big question that has to be decided are the hours and when we're extending those hours. We know that we're riding on a wave of expectation from the community, and that politically people are looking at that as well because so many constituents are interested. With the schedule that we have right now, with it just being 12 hours per week, we're not gonna see the traffic when we have full deliveries there and we have full services there. That's when we can start to look at that. So the two big issues are the staffing and the hours. So I've given the report that I did because basically whatever we decide when we wanna do those extended hours, we need to back that out at least in a month and a half to prepare for that grand reopening. And all I need, so I just gave a draft schedule of 40 hours simply because having a full-time branch manager who's a librarian, I think is critical there. And I put in the 40 hours. Previously, we were open 33 hours. I also think it might be helpful to have the branch librarian spend at least a half day per week here at the main branch so that they can interact with colleagues and peers and get programming and materials and engage with everyone there. So that is for the board to decide.
So, a recommendation, and I can speak to the council person, he's been emailing me about it because he received quite a bit of interest in the past few months about Lawrence Harbor, and I had asked him to share your survey and so on. But, you know, obviously I think we need to continue to get out to the community more, right? So maybe if we have a librarian that can come September, you know, attend PTA meetings at, you know, just at the very beginning of the meeting to say, hey, we're open, but what kind of programs would you guys like, what kind of hours? Senior center down there to find out from the seniors. I don't know what other organizations we can work with down there to find different, groups of people, not just, school children and seniors, but everybody in between as well, so.
So you're talking feedback specifically for the hours?
For hours and what they're looking for down there. I mean, that's the one thing that I've been saying for quite some time. And I was at some events in Lawrence Harbor over the past year, and people would approach me and say, we want the library open more. And and when they come to the meeting too, and since they say something, I would always have the same response. Tell us what you want down there. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, so to just kind of pull some hours out of a hat and programs out of a hat and hope that it sticks. If the community's looking for something specific, if the seniors say, yeah, I would go there every single, maybe twice a week for a cup of coffee with some friends, or read a book or play chess or something, then we know, okay, we'll give a couple of hours in the morning. If the school children, the parents are saying that, yeah, they would love to just bring their child there to pick up a book as opposed to coming down Central, then maybe after school hours is what we need to. I don't know. But, Frank was even saying, I mean, the drive from Lawrence Harbor to Central is not so bad. So maybe they would come here because there's a bigger selection of books anyway. But I think that there is a small, segment of people that don't want to do the drive or can't really do the drive. So,
Well, when you talk about this library as being Lawrence Harbor, there are 10 voting districts in that town, and each of the 6 wards in this town has roughly there's 55,000 voters in totality among, I think it's 55 election districts, and 10 of those districts are in Ward 1. But that includes Cliffwood Beach, which almost virtually everybody drives past that because they're already in the car halfway there, and they go to the main library. Now, I'm not saying don't have a children's program, which would be more effective for them as well. But for the normal course of business, historically, that's what's been happening. You've got the community, which is, I guess, 1.5 miles from Lawrence Harbor, maybe 2 miles at the most, which is the senior. The name escapes me. Geez, what's it? There's 1,000 people who live in just that senior development, which is yes, and so on. Now, as the population increases in South Oldbridge, more people are getting pushed into the other districts, but it doesn't change any of the physical characteristics that right now we have one library, and it's a nightmare coming from South Oldbridge, and it's not as bad coming from Lawrence Harbor, or coming from most of the seniors that are in that building there. None of them are walking to the library, and they're in a car. They're almost equally distant, and they can go anytime during the day. So it's not as if you're saying this is going to serve a third of the population, because it's really not, and that's documented by what the records of circulation have been, which are even suspect. So 40 hours is, I think we were 23 hours before, Joan.
Well, I wish Maria was here. Remember, we're a 7-day operation, but Lawrence Harbor was 5 days. And Amy had to get a day off because she worked on Saturday. I believe we were closed on Friday in Lawrence Harbor.
Yeah.
So
I know any individual parent is always going to want more, but the question becomes, you have to consider the long haul, and you also have to consider South Oldbridge, because they're really personally in worse shape now because of the traffic problems just to get to.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that with the committee reports.
So
Yeah.
I have a recommendation. First
sorry.
off, we have Saltwater Day coming up, and I think that's a really great opportunity for us to be there and start to ask the community what they want. The second part is services were interrupted. They weren't really what they were supposed to be down there in Lawrence Harbor for a long time, and we've had COVID and whatnot. I think we really need to just go there with an open mind and just try it. We got to just put our toes in the water and just see.
We do, but the other thing that Dawn had raised, which I agree with, is, it is a great space. but it's not very conducive to doing programs and so on, right?
The
Yeah,
programs
yeah.
would have to be done in collaboration with Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, so it, or if it was, the summertime, which we're more than halfway through already, or early fall, maybe out in the parking lot under a tent, weather permitting, of course, but, that's a couple of times a year. But for the overall, it's not really conducive to doing programming, so it's really, more of a sitting space where you can sit with, and read a book or play a game of chess or something like that, right?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things that I want to raise here, if that's all right with everyone. One is you didn't have full library services at the branch previously. You didn't have reference. You didn't have a real, a direct targeted approach at different populations within that area and that community. We had a library assistant who was doing her best to understand what full library services were. And she did a great job, but that's a very different thing than having full library services with a librarian there. So I don't think you can judge by previous records what the community would take advantage of were it offered there, because they haven't seen what we can do yet. So that's one element of it. The second part is that if we don't grow it, test it, and get it ready, you're looking at going into a much larger facility with nothing. You know what I mean? So that's one element of it. And the other thing is that libraries are becoming synonymous with programming. Programming is not libraries. We don't have nearly enough people. Some of our own staff don't even know that we have Novelist for Reader's Advisory, that we have films that are available online. From my very rough look at our circulations, about 1/10 of the circulations that are for all of Old Bridge are online only. You never see those people, and those numbers aren't showing up in your regular circulations. So the measures that we've been using, I don't think are relevant. And I think, quite honestly, they kind of hobble the potential of what we can do in Lawrence Harbor. The logistics, I absolutely understand. If you're looking for someone for ease of services to go pick up their books, that's not going to be a huge chunk unless there are other reasons to go there. And those other reasons to go there are going to be those additional services. It's going to be the deliveries with people coming back to get their books. It's going to be the engagement with the community. So, like I said, I had sort of seen this as an opportunity to get ready, to test and see what we're capable of and what investment we want to make, so that when we're ready to take on South Old Bridge, we've got a way to look at that. But just approaching it and saying programs, and having the horse there and a history lecture once in a while, that's really not what I'm looking at. One of the other things that we really need to look at with Lawrence Harbor, Verizon cell phones don't work in that branch. So that area has a really difficult coverage. So I think one of the things that we need to do is be promoting hotspots, device lending, those kinds of things, and really be promoting that this is a place to come and use the computers. Right now, the computers are outdated. The printer's not amazing. So coming in to use those services and use our Wi-Fi to do work, I think is where we would see an increase.
What has the traffic been like since they opened? I was there the first hour that they were opened. And I actually saw like a handful of like different people. One person came and sat there and used the computer for the whole hour I was there. One person came with her young son and she was checking out like the little sand table, and there was an older gentleman who came. He wanted a newspaper and he wanted to sit in the chair and read the newspaper. So they were like really different, and this is only in the first hour. So what have they seen, like traffic?
So they haven't seen a ton.
Okay.
We have a lot of people who are coming in to see what's there. They're getting very excited. Our
Yeah.
shelves aren't full at this point, which our collection, our standing collection there, is never going to be the big draw. right? Browsing for something new, that's what you're gonna do there. It's not gonna be a full collection trying to duplicate what we have at the main branch. And then the programming, what's interesting to me is I've had people here, and I understand that the formal studies and research is as important, but also doing the qualitative analysis, simple conversations with people is important. And our popular programs, duplicating those out in Lawrence Harbor would get people from this area to go over there. And that, I think, is a potential that I know I wasn't thinking of at the beginning. But to get people in the Old Bridge community to really start to look at Lawrence Harbor a little bit differently is something that we can be a part of.
Yeah, I would like to do like a story time there.
Mhm.
I think did your hours include like something before 12? I forget.
So what I did with just a very rough draft of looking at the hours was 2 evenings. So I know that we only had 20 responses so far with SurveyMonkey. It's not a proper survey, but evenings and weekends is what people have said out of the 20 we've gotten. So I put 2 evenings in, I put a Saturday in, and the others were starting with the morning hours.
Okay. Yeah.
So I agree with pretty much a lot of what you've said, right? And I said that at the personnel meeting the other day as well, that I think that this is an opportunity for us to see what we can do in South Old Bridge. So I think that this is going to be a good learning experience for us. So I think we have to take advantage of that. But I wouldn't know how to even approach suggesting hours, suggesting what we make available there. So, I'm going to obviously lean on your expertise to say to us, listen, this is how I propose we roll out, and then report back to us. I don't know if once a month is too often or if it's every other month or something, on what you're seeing there, what type of foot traffic, the discussions maybe, whoever's the librarian there has had with the community, and what recommendations have been made and so on, and come back. And then we're just going to have to adjust as we go along.
And to some extent, that's it.
Mhm.
You just got to pick a mark and you've got to start.
Yeah.
Because Dr. George, you brought up something really important the other day in the personnel committee meeting. We've never really fully been able to clarify what it is we can definitely get from Lawrence Harbor. We don't know yet, and to some extent we won't know until we give it a full effort. But I know that giving it the 12 hours a week without any librarians there is not going to ever show us what our full potential is there. And when we do things like this, I think it's important to say that we're going to do this for 6 months, and then we're going to have a report and see if we want to change something. But at some point, there's a limit to how much feedback we're going to get. There's a limit to how many people. We've just got to try it and trial it. Trialing is extremely important.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time is, what are we looking for? Are we looking for a main library and some little something over here? Or are we looking for a library system where you would be putting obviously many more things at Lawrence Harbor than we had in the past? I think issues that we ought to put to bed right now is that whoever is going to be the branch manager, whatever we're going to call it, is going to be a librarian. That's the end of that discussion. We don't have to keep saying that. I think it makes sense. If you're going to look for a variety of programs, you need somebody that knows about a variety of programs. So that would be a librarian. So that's that. Hours, you just have to look at who you're servicing. Whoever came up with 3 hours, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, from 1 to 5, who's the clientele? The only people that could go there were people with little kids, not people who were working, or people. We had no evening hours. So that was a mistake. And I think you fixed that a little bit by changing it now. You definitely need a weekend time. I mean, people who are asking for that makes sense. People go to work. They still would like to use the library. What I would like to see happen too is look towards the schools, look towards those community programs we used to have that they got away with. And those could be replicated in places. I got a Black Seal license by going to night school there. I mean, it was a lot of fun and you could do it. You could take social dancing, you could take photography. We could have courses like that at Lawrence Harbor. People would go for that. They're not gonna go from Englishtown Road to Lawrence Harbor to get a book. I mean, that's just silly. You don't know Old Bridge if you think.
And Dawn, one of the things that we also have is a superintendent is one of the state mandated people of schools is a permanent member, whoever that person is, and they have an alternate who comes here. Same way with the mayor. He doesn't usually come. Now, we have some very unique situations. We have two of the only planetariums. I think there's maybe 36 of them throughout the state, which have been fully renovated in the last, I guess, 5 years on grant money. And what is that? Help me with this, Chris. What's that fancy thing where everything goes up? IMAX?
Oh, the IMAX projection, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the thing with that is we came up with a concept and we ran it by them and we got no cooperation from the school district.
Well, I think we shouldn't give up, Frank. We've been doing
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm trying to let people know that would allow us. Now, they can only seat 88 seats in it. Normally, we just did a planetarium program, the school district did. But there are all kinds of IMAX films down there that are educational, that are mind expansion, that are about a lot of things that kids are not necessarily going to see in a regular movie. That can be bought, and they're considerably expensive, where we have the ability to fund some of those things and
We can't
try
put
to get
them
a
on.
shared service committee with the Board of Ed to give us access to those machines and that provide the operating staff and work out a shared service agreement where you've got the two schools, they're at opposite ends of the town. One is in the grade 9 building, which used to be Sandberg, and the other one's in Sauk School. And we still have other schools coming in to use the facilities because of the fact that we have two of them that are very close to the central part of New Jersey. So I think we really need to take a run at that and have somebody take a look at the catalogs of what are available and just pursue that as well.
But for Lawrence Harbor, we need to think outside of the box. That is just my point. That you could come up with programs that could be done at Lawrence Harbor that would get people there. You talk about, the program for, what do we have, computer office or whatever we do. You could do buying and selling on eBay over at Lawrence Harbor and those computers. You'd get somebody from there going to that. But I think that's programming. That's a whole nother issue.
So-
What we
And
need
maybe
to do is stop-
even working with the Historical Society, because Lawrence Harbor at one time was a very active nautical community. And, having programs wrapped around that theory with their help would be another thing to go after.
That's the history of
So,
Lawrence Harbor.
I think that's, a great idea, Frank, that, we reach out to Historical Society and others, right?
And
Which
I have.
obviously a librarian would want to do to create programs and so on, right? So what is your ask at this time to be able to move forward to do a test? Is it for a librarian for 40 hours a week that we can start to decipher what type of hours and so on that we're looking to do there?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I don't wanna overcomplicate it, but I just wanna say, if we had, a librarian, a full-time branch manager, whatever hours aren't consumed by Lawrence Harbor, we have an idea farm that doesn't have a person to staff it right now, so there's plenty of things here for an adult services or branch librarian to do.
And what you could do with that person is have that person almost act as a project manager for Lawrence Harbor.
Absolutely.
And investigate what type of either programs and hours and so on that the community is looking for.
Sure.
Is that what you would do?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would make a recommendation that we do a 6-month trial for 40 hours per week, right? To work towards
Are you going
deciding
from
what is.
12 to 40?
Well, it was 23 or 26 hours, Joan. I mean, it's 12 hours now, but that was
No,
not.
okay, so it was, but
was
I would like to
23 or
see what
25
his
hours
spread is.
before.
Yeah.
It's 12 hours.
And
You
I
have
did,
to.
I did sit down with Amy, and that's who came up with those hours. If she's mistaken, we can correct them, but it was 33 hours per week.
So my
And-
recommendation, hold on, would be to do this for a 6-month trial where we're not mandated to the 6-month trial. What I would then ask, right, is that we get a quarterly update,
Yeah.
right? So you have the first quarterly update would be, I guess, for the October meeting, be for the end of September. That would include July, August, and September. What have we seen at the library as far as foot traffic, conversations with community, reaching out to partners within the community and so on, and report back quarterly. And at that point, the board can then discuss if they want to alter it at all, but we'll make a commitment towards going out for 6 months and seeing where we're at in 6 months. So that would be, we started at July 1st, that would be,
Oh, but we don't have 40 hours as of July 1st.
no, but the library's been
I
open
would even
since
say
July 1st.
maybe doing like after Labor Day. Like
And so that's why I was kind of saying September,
Mhm.
because that gives us August 12th with Saltwater Day to start. And if we report to the community that as of September 7th or whatever it is, we're moving forward with that,
Yeah.
we can be ready for that.
that's what I want.
And you can use Saltwater Day to advertise.
Yep. And
Yeah,
amongst other things.
things. And
Yeah.
then I would say that we would look to do as we've spoken before, a formal grand reopening in
Absolutely.
September, mid-September. We'll invite the mayor and the council person from that ward, and have them reach out to their constituents and say, come out to the library and in Lawrence Harbor, see what we have out here. And then we'll be there to speak to the community that shows up as well.
And Parks and Rec has been very supportive, so I'll also reach out to Matt Mercurio, because right now they're in the middle of summer camp,
It's in
so that's
Mhm.
a lot.
Mhm.
So I think, they might be ready to talk about what we can do out there. The pony, everybody's asking for the therapy horse and
Roxy,
story
yeah.
times and all of those things. So if we can have a calendar of those things ready to go, and maybe even get a couple of them started in August, I think it would be good.
So
Summer
if we
camp
did
is
something
done
like
August
that,
4th.
would we be able to work with Parks and Rec? I know it's across the street, but where the library is leading the program, but it's over in the Parks and Rec building, as you were mentioning, that the branch itself, the Amboy Bank branch, is small
Just can't fit
and
that
there's
many
no actual room to run a program.
Yeah, and that's where I need to reach out to Matt. Like I said, I was just trying to let him breathe, and I know that they've been really helpful, and I don't know how much that facility is used during the school year.
Yeah, camp is done, I think, August 4th or something, like,
Okay.
so it's pretty soon. At least the half-day camp, the full-day camp is probably 2 more weeks, or.
So-
Yeah, it goes to August 25th.
So my
Is it that late?
my takeaway is to reach out to Matt, and then, are we looking at putting in and doing the hire for the full-time branch manager? Because that's personnel committee, correct?
That is personnel committee, yes.
I think you should.
Yeah, I think we should too. We shouldn't go at it saying we're gonna be 15 hours or whatever forever. Like, we should go get somebody in
It's a
there who
business.
can build it up. We're gonna need it, so.
You've got, your next meeting's just 3 weeks from now because this one was delayed, so you can get that done and still have a reasonable target right after Labor Day.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you should really reach out, I don't know if you have one or not, so forgive me, but
Yeah,
marketing,
Always suggest.
all around Old Bridge. There's an
All right,
article
yeah.
in there, Anthony Constantino, and I'll email you his information.
Please do,
You put an
thank you.
article in there, if you do an article and you do like a flyer for the grand opening, I am sure without a doubt, because that's
Well,
what
don't
this
they
is all
reach out to
about.
the library and do, they used to anyway. I
No
don't know if they
one's
haven't.
reached out to me.
I know.
Well, because
they
we
used to have a
were going
director
between,
or-
directors,
we
so they
can't
might have
hear
just
you.
lost that whole contact.
Could you turn it around sometime, Dawn, because when you turn the other way, I can't hear you at all.
And I apologize, we
It's
tried.
okay, it's my
We
ears.
tried a new microphone, and it gave too much feedback. So we're working on Kevin's suggestion that we have that mid-table microphone so it'll be easier to hear next time.
I'm sure it will be fine, and a lot of it is personal because it's my hearing that's defective. I know that.
So,
I realize now that I read lips 9/10 of the time, so
I also saw something, and I just want to interject this. I forgot what town I was in, but their billboard, their marquee, advertised that they had museum passes. And I thought that was a fabulous idea. So Lisa Balsara in Parks and Rec, if you email her, she will put it onto the marquee. for you.
Okay. So, and this just quickly goes back to exactly what Dr. George was talking about with what goes into that manager of extended patron services role, and that's just it. Having a marketing person, the reality is the majority of marketing is coordinating, making sure, see what outlets do we have, how frequently are we using them, and that management is something that can certainly be done in that role.
so now my next question on Lawrence Harbor is there were issues with the Wi-Fi, the router.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Did you get it out of the closet?
Yes.
ATM closet?
Yes, we got it out of the ATM closet, and I do have to take special thanks to Chris and to Kevin for helping me to remain focused. I now will be going out again tomorrow. So we got our router back. It was dismantled from the cable that was run. So I'm going out with Optimum to get a fully comprehensive solution to the cabling, and we've remained civilized with our landlord there. So yes, it's a win, and hopefully tomorrow I'll send you all a sweet hallelujah. When you see that message, know what it means.
Okay.
you know, also when we talk, I think you just mentioned something about the person for extended services or whatever we're gonna call them. That person would have knowledge and bring things like, you told me the hotspots were over there because you didn't have any Wi-Fi. That's okay, but that isn't what we bought hotspots.
Absolutely.
We're not giving them to the citizens. We're using them, you know, we have a budget for that stuff. But things like the museum passes, do you think that people only go to Lawrence Harbor know anything about it? Because I don't think we ever advertised it there. You know,
I don't-
we just have to expand our thinking and thinking of it as a full-fledged library. You know, that's what I think we want, I would think. And the thing about September and having a big hoo-ha in September and October, well, it's a bad year for that because it's an election year. And it's a time when
It's,
you just have to-
I think that's a great,
perfect
I think
time.
that's the perfect
It
time.
brings everybody.
Yeah.
It may be, except that
it's
Lawrence Harbor is really prejudicial to that part of
No,
town.
it's not a campaign
Doesn't
event.
work
I do
like
not
that.
agree with that.
No,
I would only invite the
No, just
mayor
to
and
show
any
us.
council people, but I wouldn't ask any
You might not get the
campaign.
mayor because he's gonna be on the campaign trail.
People are interested. So just as an example today, because I always tell staff, you're constantly selling. You're like a Gap salesperson. Like when you go in, do you need jeans with that sweater? And so that's what we always need to be doing with library services. And I saw a family today and they were looking at DVDs. And I said, do you know that you also have Canopy? You have a free streaming services, a free streaming service that has 2,000 children's titles available, for everything from Arthur to Where the Wild Things Are. And they were really excited about that. So it's making sure that we've got staff who are aware of all of our resources, which is a bare minimum. Every librarian should be aware of these things, and then everyone should be selling them. And that's what we can do. And it's going to be a lot of one-to-one with just getting out and talking to people. The promotions are important, but so is the face-to-face.
Yep.
You know,
Okay.
and
Anything else? Good. Joan, get it.
Dawn had brought us something else that is obvious. We have seemed to have lost staff training. In the length of time I've been here, we used to close for one day and have staff training, have kind of stuff going on all the time, and some kind of an emphasis on. And now there are so many programs on YouTube or Zoom or whatever that people could take very, good certified not librarian, but library programs. She is going to talk about staff training, and I think that needs to be an emphasis too. We'll work that into everything. Because I just think of having a little place in Lawrence Harbor to go to learn how to buy on eBay. There would be people very interested in that who don't care about learning how to use Excel or Office, you know what I mean? We've never done that. We also might need to think about renting out or giving out Chromebooks. They do that in other libraries. Those are things that I think that's outside of the box. That's why we do need a librarian over there. We do need somebody in charge of everything. This would be this extended person. And I think we'll see progress. And we just have to remember that we're Old Bridge. We're not Lawrence Harbor or Cheesequake Woods. And my point of being around election time is, if you're going to invite the mayor, I would suggest you invite the 2 mayoral candidates.
Absolutely not. These are not campaigns.
Then don't get
And I would never ask anyone to campaign at the library. The library is not some place to campaign. And so I would ask, just as Dawn had mentioned, just seated not constituents, officials.
Who?
Just those officials that are already in those roles. So
Those are the ones that are running.
Yeah, but you
Well-
don't make that, it's not an open forum for them to start to
Yeah,
campaign, but they
yeah,
know that. They
yeah.
know that that's not the place. That's like school property. You don't do that.
Yeah,
So you're gonna say the council, you're gonna invite the council, and that's fair? When there are 3 people who are not on the council.
I'm not
invite
inviting the council. Why does a Ward 6 councilman need to be at the Lawrence Harbor?
I don't know why we would invite them. I think we're separate. The mayor doesn't have to be invited. He's on this board. So I want to stay out of politics.
It's the mayor that worked with us to get this to happen.
Right. The
That
mayor should be
reached
there
out
and
to
the council
Amboy
person
Bank. So,
Ward 1
you know,
should be
I
there.
Look, I'm not for or against the mayor. I don't care about that. That's a whole nother area. I just want the library to operate like it's supposed to as a fully independent group.
and civic participation, in my experience only, which could be expanded, but civic participation is in giving the public access to seated officials, not typically to potential officials. Once a person is seated,
It should be
it can have
everybody
a
that's
direct
going.
impact on their experience, then they're someone, yeah.
Right.
That kind of.
I think that the state has told you who they want involved when they required that the mayor and the superintendent of the schools serve on the board. They want the library.
And I would invite the superintendent and the
It's
officials of
related.
the school district as well, because they have a hand in the libraries as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
definitely our department heads.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
town, because they've
Yeah.
been really helping us.
Well, at any rate, the only other thing about hours is you can always add them. If you go to take them away because they haven't been used, then you're a bad guy. So
Yeah.
start conservatively and with an eye to add whatever you have to add.
And if you're only gonna have one librarian there, he or she's got a 40-hour week and they only work
35.
35 hours.
35.
Yeah,
No, I understand that, but if you got 40 hours, my point is,
But that's why Lawrence Harbor wasn't open
Right.
7 days a week.
So-
I'll keep that in mind.
Do we have any concerns in Lawrence Harbor, of safety, with such limited staff? So for instance, you were mentioning with the router and the phones aren't working, and what happens if, God forbid, somebody needs to call for an ambulance or police or something like that? Are we sure that we always have, some sort of avenue to be able to get help if someone there needs help?
So tomorrow, I plugged the phone in to the router. So unfortunately for all of us, since landlines are no longer a thing, if your router's not working for a lot of people, you don't have coverage.
Yes.
So we're gonna have we've got cordless phones there that we are literally gonna plug into the router, so that's the equivalent of a
Of a
landline.
landline, yeah, so, but you have that, but the alternative to that, when the dump truck takes down the cable line outside, is that the person has their cell phone.
But
And if
they
for
have
some
Verizon,
reason
it
their
won't
cell
work.
phone is not working, then they have the landline. So
And-
there's a secondary.
So I have a question.
And-
There's an alarm system and that needs to be a thing, correct?
Yeah.
So wouldn't there be like a panic button or something that would alert people? You have the firehouse right down the block that would probably get the first alarm and then they'll send
They may not have that
a call
active
to
Yeah.
the,
your period of use.
Yeah.
The alarm is set.
The alarm is set, but
The
yeah.
alarm is on.
So you should see if it has a panic, because if it does, God forbid, somebody comes in, God forbid, anything that can happen, somebody could press it and you get help immediately.
But
The-
what
That's
if,
where it
what if there's
goes.
nobody available to press it? So
And-
what I'm saying is, what if the person is fallen, the one person that's in the library has fallen and can't get up?
That's
Well, we
right.
wanna have two, no? I
So,
thought,
so
Sounds
there's
like a
always,
commercial right
there-
there.
there's always a library assistant along with the librarian. There has to be
Right.
two people in the building.
Yeah.
And I know that this sounds a bit pedestrian, but you go to the BP. Just walk over to the fence at the gas station next door and for some reason, cell coverage picks up.
Okay.
So,
That's so
Yeah.
bizarre. Put a big
Yeah.
sign, cell coverage here.
well, but this
No,
is
yeah,
why
I
we
was
wanna
there.
make
It
sure
does
that
not
there are
work. Doesn't
DVDs,
work.
potentially lending out DVD players to people in that area. People are getting excited about it, so.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move on then. Any other old business?
I have a question about South.
South
Old
Oldridge,
Bridge?
go ahead. That's
Just,
old business.
Frank, is anything going on with that? I know you were reaching out to Nicole.
Well, yeah, I
about
spoke to the
that.
mayor and he gave me off the top of his head. Now, he was in private business for a long time, so he's got a good sense of what the cost would be. The facility that is being built in Lawrence Harbor, I think is $7.5 million. And, we gave $1.5 million of that, out of the excess funds that we had. So my personal feeling, I started doing some individual work yet, and I'll be happy to have a committee meeting maybe in a couple weeks or so for the people who are on the committee and at least bring you up to speed, where we might want to consider getting a hard number on what the actual cost is going to be. Now, nothing I think is going to be made for a decision by the town until whoever's in charge is January 1st and they get settled in before they're going to be worrying about a project like that. The big thing to keep in mind, and I believe most of you were at the inspection when we looked at the place, you agreed that the position was good. It's almost a full acre, and we'd probably be talking about a facility initially of 8,000 to 10,000 square feet, which is slightly bigger than what I think the new center is going to be. That should make it a lot more livable for a lot more people, because not only will people go there from just the immediate neighborhoods, but you'll have people who it's halfway distance. It's not halfway distance, but the distance between the firehouse and the main library is going to have people coming to that branch rather than go to the main library. And they can do that on a weekend or when hours are more favorable, because 516 is just a nightmare. And everybody knows that. I believe they do. Of course, the people who live in Lawrence Harbor don't know that necessarily because they don't go over that way. But yeah, and there's $300,000, which is seed money, in addition to whatever surplus we have. And I, with the board's permission, talked to Chris. I started looking at some of the laws and I decided this is why I'm not a lawyer. There's a lot of library law that tells you exactly what your limitations are, what you can do as far as rents and all of those things. And I think we have to have all of that knowledge in our hand before we go to the township and make a proposal for them. Because
Frank, when did
obviously
we
if they're not
decide
a
that we're
building,
going-
I'm sorry, say again, I didn't hear you.
When did we decide that we were going to go into that building on Marlborough Road?
We didn't
Look
decide.
at anything else? We didn't decide. Well,
No.
okay, that's what I.
No, we didn't decide. This is all recognizing the need. And one of the things you can do for need is a simple traffic survey. Which those are always, as coming from the planning board, Joan, you and I both, There's always
I'll
traffic
look for it.
surveys for the impacts of developments on traffic in the area.
And
So,
I think that South Oldbridge has changed dramatically in the last 10 years, whatever. I have no idea of what the people there want, whether they want a building, whether they are you buying books. I don't know. There just seems to me a lot of work you have to do before you decide on a place. And
Well,
are there other places that we could use other than
Well,
that?
so Joey,
not
I
for
think we've been
free.
looking, I think we've been looking for a place for well over 20 years. Now, and I'm not gonna say we're gonna 100% do this location. But I do think, to Frank's point, that, you know, work and discussions need to take place to determine what the cost is going to be, what, to have the surveyor out there
survey,
and so on, complete their tasks, and then get all of the information and determine if this is the right location or not.
So
So-
the survey hasn't even been done yet? We talked about that like over 6 months ago. No one ever did that? Frank, did you ever speak to anyone from the town about doing the survey?
I talked to the mayor, as I've said before, and basically the fact that he's running for the state senate right now,
It's not the
his
person-
concern is the race. But the big issue is, I think, is that if the library wants a facility there, they're gonna have to make the determination and bring facts with them. And then do the survey. The reality is, most of the growth in the town now is still taking place in wards 5 and ward 6. And as you know, I believe Marlborough Road's still in Ward 5.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and as those wards they're gonna start to shrink a little bit, only because every 10 years at the census, they resort those out based on trying to even them out as much as possible. So as they grow and have more people in it, 5 is gonna shrink, 6 is gonna shrink a little bit, only because they'll have too many people otherwise for the elections. So, yeah, those things, a lot of that is not rocket scientists. And the survey is the census information that can be broken down, and there's groups that'll do that for you. But I don't think they're gonna fund us for doing that. That's something to be worked out between whoever the new government is starting in January.
Okay, but can we get the survey done? The surveyor is not.
Well, if this board wants to authorize it to pay for it, because the town's not gonna pay for it, in my opinion, at this point.
It's a
It
township
should
person.
happen already. It should be in.
It's just, I mean, like the
So-
township person.
so
No,
like-
I've heard you say multiple times it should be done already. So you need to find out what it costs, and then you need to get a
We did
motion
do a
from
survey.
the board of.
Right, so
trustees.
hold on, so let me interject here. So to that point, Frank, I think it's your committee. If you can get a committee meeting together and start to gather some of that information and bring that back to us, then we as a board can decide.
Haven't I said that 5 minutes ago?
Right.
I said what you just said 5 minutes ago. I'd have a meeting in the next few weeks. And I've already started preparing for that meeting.
Yep,
Isn't there a survey out? Kevin, didn't you have
no,
somebody?
that's a different survey.
Shouldn't
That's a different type of survey. What?
Shouldn't it be on the property? The township should have it. Code enforcement or engineering should have it.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
Because they have the
Okay,
building.
Okay, so you're
It's a
part,
township
so hold on a
property.
minute, you're part of the committee with Frank?
I don't think so.
I thought you were.
I just implemented the building
Oh.
because
Oh, okay, I thought
We
you were on
have
the
the building.
committee. Okay.
No, it's
No.
me, Sarah, Zainab, and Frank.
Yeah, and I became familiar with that because when the building was first resurrected, my daughter's 60th birthday party was held there, and I was very active in the soccer league, so I knew most of the places in town at that time anyway. So it's a good location. It's a nice flat piece of property, and basically it's got, in my opinion, it's got adequate parking for a facility of that size. So it's got a lot of things, we could consider going into a storefront,
Oh, I do
because there's
think,
plenty of those that are around and empty, but it won't be as big, and
yeah,
and it's not gonna have enough parking.
nice, they just fixed.
I think that one of the things that might be helpful to the board, the directors in LMXAC are extremely helpful. They just did, for instance, a survey of everyone, whether they're having hybrid, in-person or Zoom board meetings. And you got a nice listing of every library that's in the consortium and what they're doing. So just to get kind of the lay of the land of what's worked in other communities, I think that most communities this size and larger have branches. So I think one of the things I'd like to do is reach out to other directors that have branches within their system, and just get some information on how they decided what to do there, what tools and resources they used, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Dawn, because, and I think Frank, you were saying that, you know, we don't need something big out there, right? It would be essentially similar to what we're gonna have in Lawrence Harbor, just a very small facility. And again, going back to the point of that's why the Lawrence Harbor, I think, is a good test run as far as what do we want to get out of these branches. But if you can also find out what do these other libraries of similar sizes are they utilizing, what are they getting the best benefits out of their branches?
Yeah.
And then we can design something towards that.
Yeah.
I've been following LMXAC and based not so much on their additional $5,000 or whatever they charge for the branch, that we've seen more branches close than open in the time that I've been here.
Yeah, I just really want to get a nice snapshot of everyone within the area with who has branches, who doesn't, how many branches do you have, what worked, what didn't work, and now that we have survey,
Well, that's already listed in their membership rules. That comes down every year.
what I really want is that additional context from library directors and not just numbers from LMXAC. They're gonna be able to tell me what worked, what they tried, what resources they used, and that's not gonna be in the numbers.
Okay,
Whatever.
all right, so let's move on. Any other old business? So we'll move on to new business. Anybody have anything for new business? Then we'll move on to director's report.
Don't go so fast.
Just a
Old
couple,
business,
Hold
you're
on.
moving fast on old
Okay.
business. Dawn, what about the doors? I was looking
I think she's gonna cover that in director's report.
okay, all right, very good. These are things that were carried
Yeah.
over from the last,
She mentioned
meeting
it.
that we said we were gonna hear about.
So go ahead.
okay, so we'll start with that then. So we still haven't had a perfectly clear answer on where we're at with using the town's QPA.
I'll sign that like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Things got complicated. So you've got two issues here. Whether we can use the QPA to get the doors done. And then the suggestion was made that that's a great idea for us to use the QPA. If we had an agreement for shared services, we could always use the QPA, but there should be an agreement for shared services. That opened up another broader line of questioning, which was, is there even a user services agreement between the library
Yeah.
and the town? And there isn't one.
There is.
So I've been asking for some clarification. Honestly, if we don't get the clarification very soon regarding whether we can use the QPA from the town, we're gonna have to go out to bid. And that would be extremely unfortunate and it would be a waste of time and money. But it's also the reality. As I understand it, the town has more than one qualified purchasing agent. We just haven't gotten a perfectly clear answer. If we want the shared services agreement, I understand that that needs to go before the council to be approved. But whether we could, as a one-time, go through and use the QPA from the town, this is simply the estimate on these doors is literally $4,000 more than the bid threshold, which is why I was trying to use the QPA. So
Their building, like, why do we have
No.
to jump through? Like, I don't-
no, and that's where it gets different. because we do use the building. There's two ways to go about. It's either have a building usage agreement with the town where you clearly specify all of the expectations, or you leave it a little ambiguous. And by not having an agreement, it's ambiguous. So technically we are, kind of leasing the building without a charge, free of charge, but we're also given a municipal appropriation that enables us to maintain the building. So it's not here, pay for your building. They're giving us a municipal appropriation that includes a portion that is for maintenance of the building. So that's where money is not an issue. It's simply a matter of whether we can avail ourselves of the procurement expertise of the qualified purchasing agent for the town. And I'm trying to get a clear answer on that.
I don't understand, if it is not my building, why am I putting new doors on it?
Because you're given an appropriation, you're given the funds to maintain the building
But isn't
by
that
the
by
town.
law?
So, no,
Yes.
no,
It's a 1/3 mil, it's a requirement that
The
every,
appropriation.
yeah, the
Mhm.
appropriation.
So wouldn't we have that whether we had our own building or not? Like we would, I don't know.
Chris, I think there's about 40 or 50 different pages of law that refer specifically to the relationships between municipalities and their libraries.
Yes.
That covers all this. I was putting myself into a coma trying to read it.
Yeah,
No.
so essentially what came to me on it is the municipality provides us the building to provide the services.
Mhm.
We
I
also
suggest we have a
yeah,
review it.
right? Whereas we could have it the other way, whereas they could turn around and say, well, we're gonna charge you X amount of dollars a month to lease out this building, and then we'll cover the expenses on all of the repairs. So one way or another, we're paying, whether we pay to fix the doors or we pay a monthly. So we said, yeah, okay, we have no problem paying it. And I think that's where Himanshu got a little
Yeah,
confused, right? He thought we were asking for them to pay for the
Yeah,
doors, and then you were able to clarify for him, we just want to be able to use the QPA.
yeah.
So then, and with using the QPA, you said we're gonna save about $4,000. That's because
We,
we won't, like, the bid would wind up being much higher.
yes, so, no, the bid wouldn't be higher. The process is because you're basically going to need legal services to go out to bid. The other thing is that we're basically lost at this point. If we'd been able to use the QPA right away, we would have saved about 6 weeks of time. We've now lost that advantage.
Yeah.
I know.
And
So
it is
And you had to
unfortunate.
fix
So,
it. You
so
have to
what do
fix
we,
the
so what do
doorway.
we need to do now? So we
Yeah.
need to get we need to utilize the QPA, right? And the township doesn't want us to use that without a shared services agreement?
I don't think that
Is there-
that's the case.
Okay,
That last email that we got said that since everyone had already agreed we could use the QPA, that was fine. A shared services agreement would be beneficial,
Mhm.
but he said that's up to your attorney. So that's why I sent the email to try and get clarity on that. So I kind of feel like if one of you follows up on that.
sure. So,
Yeah, so we can do it. Long-term, big picture, it would be good to have a QPA shared services agreement.
Mhm.
As far as these doors go, if they will just do it for us, that is fine. That's
okay.
expedient and it's gonna save you money.
And there's
So
more than one.
basically, you need me to call Himanshu tomorrow and say, just tell us which QPA to use, and then I'll have Chris work with you on creating a shared service.
For the future.
Correct?
We already have the
Yeah.
shared services
Yep.
agreement. That's, I mean, we have it drafted.
Okay.
We did that the day after the last meeting because it was gonna be quick and easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, in some
So, one
ways,
hopeful moment.
it's my fault, but I do think that this is important for us in the
Bless you, Dawn.
future.
It's not
What's
your-
that?
I said, God bless you, it's not your fault. You just got- Now, we pay, is that shared services when we pay to plow the parking lot?
Yeah,
So we do have some kind of an agreement. We
but
pay
there's
them-
no,
We have a shared services arrangement,
yeah,
not a shared services agreement.
yeah, it's
So
not
you're gonna
formal.
make that more concrete or more real? Is that what we're talking
The
about?
problem is if we start to formalize the agreement, there may be add-ons, there may be, especially with the business office changing at the township, it could be something that we get that we did not ask for.
What did we do about the
Become
roof?
worse.
Because we paid for part of the roof. How do we handle that?
So if I can say, this is where what Phil talked about becomes extremely important. So whenever there's money left over at the end of the year, realistically, the board should vote to put that into a capital fund. And then in order to have a capital fund, you need a capital plan, and that's state law. And capital, I could come up with a capital plan in 5 minutes. It's just, we need 50,000 for computers. We want to put away 50,000 towards a roof that we're going to need in 5 years. And this way, we've always got a plan for any additional funds.
And you protect money.
Yeah, and
'Cause
right now
otherwise
they're
it
kind
could
of
be taken
floating.
away.
Yeah. Yep. So, and it's
20%.
also what made me hesitate with just getting the budget out so quickly. I went in and I took a look, and I respect the interim director so much that I thought I was just going to be in perfect agreement, but I'm not. I like to make sure that our capital expenses are kept out from our regular operating expenses so that we're not going into debt the following year. Meaning, we do all this hiring. We don't put that into salaries. We take it out of this excess revenue. Well, what do you do next year when you don't have excess revenue? So it's just not responsible. So I need to go back in and do some really deep work on salaries and budget and all of those things. I'm going to get it done quickly. With the other things.
Yeah.
Now that Optimum's
Yeah.
over, hopefully. Yeah.
All
All right. So that's that.
Mhm.
Next, I just want to let everybody know that the roof was leaking yesterday. And that this is a very complex roof situation. It did not start leaking during the first deluge. The first tropical cyclone that came through was dry. The second one was not. Public Works came right away and helped with tarps and things like that. I'm just telling you, this is most likely going to be a flashing issue. Just, I don't know why I know why I know that. I'm telling you. It's why you have ice, when you have ice, that you end up with a leak instead of regular rain coming down. It's fun. All right, so that was there. So I've started a facility diary so that we're gonna have a much better look. It's going to be available to anyone who wants to see it, but it's just gonna have a day by day. Which bathrooms are clogged, I'm sorry, but when that ends up in a call to a plumber as opposed to us getting it fixed. So it's got the date that something happens, it's got which system is affected, whether that's roof, plumbing, HVAC, whatever like that. And this way we're gonna have a log, because otherwise it's, oh, the bathrooms are always clogged, but you don't have details. So we're getting into that.
Is that another Google Drive thing?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I want access.
So thank you for saying that. I do want to ask, Esty, do you want to be the volunteer to test the Google Drive?
Sure.
So what I want to do is just make sure that personal addresses people are able to access without having to ask permission for everything. So if it's all right with everyone, I'm going to test that out on Esty to make sure, and then we'll ask everyone to join in. Once we know that it's not going to be a problem. Next, I want to thank Chris again for doing a draft for us for an update to the policy for notaries. What I do need to do though, so essentially, notaries right now, we have kind of, people can show up whenever they want and have a notary. What that's ending up, the result is that librarians are being called out of story time to notarize things. So we've got to set it up a little differently. We've gone through a few iterations where part-timers were allowed, part-timers weren't allowed, everyone was a notary, and we want to suggest strongly, as with passports, that people make an appointment. And if they don't make an appointment, we'll still do it, but they'll have to wait. And Dr. George gave an excellent example the other day. You can make an appointment with the doctor, or you can go in and hope that you can get in. So we're going to do that. I just want to clarify who's a notary, because I'm not, but I want to clarify those kinds of things. One other thing, Frank, this one was for you, but also for everyone. You talked about the passport scheduling and that there's better scheduling software out there. I checked into that. The reason ours isn't great is because we're using a free service instead of the fee-based product. That's why we don't have as many options. So I will be evaluating that with the rest of the administrative software. We are very excited with the technology position coming in. We have an issue where Linda's computer, which is extremely important, and the backups that are being done for QuickBooks and all of our personnel documents, I'm not sure that they're being backed up. I'm not sure that there's an offsite backup for that technology, that there's a battery backup. So we've got some really critical issues that are going to get taken care of right away. Let's see, that was all of my extra stuff. That's all I got.
Any discussion on director's report? Anybody have any questions or anything?
Yeah, I have a question about the
You all love
passport scheduling.
I really do.
Yeah, Frank, passport schedule.
When I was looking over the passport activity, I noticed that there were only 72 photos done for over 537 applications. Now, as I understand it, I know it's not a big ticket item, but it's a profitable item for us. Do we, as a part of when we advertise our passport services, do we put that as the head of the banner so people can buy the pictures from us and drive that revenue up a lot closer so they don't have to go out and find a place that's going to do it and go to that place separately and come in?
Yeah, I think Esty brings up a good point. I think that 72 might be photo only, not photo plus passport. So I'll clarify that.
Library will be closing in 15 minutes. Please bring all items to the front.
Yeah,
No, so I mean, I understand somebody coming in to walk off the street and they can get the photo ID for a different reason. Is that what you're saying?
No. So what I'm saying is we have a lot of people who come in to get their passport done who have their photos taken here. They know that they can get their photo here.
Yeah.
Sometimes people want a passport photo, but they don't want their passport done here. They just want the photo. So I think what Esty's clarifying is that 72 isn't the percentage of passport applicants who get photos. That's the total number of people who do not get their passport here and only want a photo.
Well, then from my perspective, that's even worse. Because my point is, if we advertise up front that you can get the passport here done that qualifies, and we're less expensive from what I gather on the outside. So
Well,
why not
if
make some
I
extra
go to
money?
get my passport done, I just need a picture. So I come to the library, get my picture, and I mail it away myself, no?
But they're getting their passport pictures done here. That number is substantial. The lower number is only for people who are only coming in.
All right, let me rephrase then. Why don't we report the ones that are done here so we know that?
I'm gonna look into that.
Thank you.
And one other number, because trust me, I am trying to get our numbers in and make them a regular part. Right now, our department report includes nothing on acquisitions or circulations, and that's got to change. So I at least wanted to give you, for the month of June, our average foot traffic with people entering the building was almost 550 people a day. Now you've got to remember that the average is higher because Sundays are shorter days and Saturdays are shorter days. So 546.4 is the average of all of those different days put together. I can give you other numbers, and I think we'll do that probably on a quarterly basis, where we look at what's our busiest time, what's our busiest day, that kind of thing. But I just wanted you to know that I am looking.
How do you figure that? Like, it's a silly question,
They
but
send us the
how do you
number.
figure it out? But like, is it like the amount of time the doors open? Like, how does
They do it by hour with the number of people that are coming in. It's a camera system from a company called SenSource.
Yep.
And
The last time we tracked it that way, surprisingly, the per hour rate and even the daily count was higher on Saturday as the second day. Tuesday was first for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I've been really surprised at the numbers I'm seeing. I'm honestly not seeing a real, like, here's a Tuesday that's 607. So that's higher than the average. So I'm not really
That might have
seeing
been
a
a good
pattern,
program.
but Saturdays are definitely, well, here's a Saturday that's only 471, and here's a Saturday that's 937.
Well,
I think-
900
And it's a short number of
And-
hours.
summer reading.
And Esty's right, that was the summer reading kickoff,
There were a lot.
which was with the Touch-A-Truck. That's when we had the 937 people in that day. So the numbers are being monitored and collected.
Great.
All right, so we will move on to committee reports. I don't think that there's much. Buildings and grounds, Rocco's not here, but I don't think there was anything, unless you know of something going. Finance, Maria did tell me today that she plans to present the budget in August, as soon as she has the draft to review, as you were mentioning earlier. Outreach and marketing, Frank, other than the discussions that we had earlier, anything else? No?
No, nothing,
All
nothing
right,
at this
and
point.
personnel, Dr. George, anything? I think we covered it all in executive session.
I think we discussed a lot. I think we
Yeah.
do all of it. One of our suggestions for that extended patron services was to move passports under there. So that's something to think about.
And we'll be getting negotiations done with the supervisory group
Right.
in the coming months.
Yep, thank you. Now, policy, Rocco's not here, but you were mentioning the policy for the
Notary.
notary, so I guess you'll reach out to him regarding that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can board approve that in August.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, in the director's report, I
The Old
mentioned
Public Library will be closing in 10 minutes. This is the final call for all
Yeah,
materials.
I mentioned
Thank you.
the banned book policy,
Oh.
the format for that. Did I put that in?
No.
Sorry, I just wanna let you know, I was really, really excited that when I looked at our collection development policy, which is the overarching policy that impacts book banning and things like that, it is solid, even though it was done in 2015. And should anyone want to challenge any library materials, I just updated the form so that it goes back to my name. It still had Nancy's on it, but there's nothing that I would change in it. So I was very pleased to see that. So we're settled on that controversial potentiality.
So one thing, I apologize, because I'm probably going back to old business. You had mentioned to me that you had found the certificate for the Friends group.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So this is a little complex and I looked at Chris, but I've also done this a whole bunch of times. So I feel pretty comfortable with it, but stop me wherever. So the library doesn't run the Friends group, but not many people know enough about libraries or Friends groups to not do the Friends group without the assistance of the library director in particular, or a liaison. So the 501c3 status has been revoked because financial statements were not put into the IRS. We did find a whole cabinet with their checking checkbooks. We have financial statements, we have all of those things, so we know where the money is. We have all of that stuff. So what we need to do at this point is have an informational organizational meeting for the Friends, in which I will basically say, here's what we need if you want to start having a volunteer program and you want to start doing fundraising. And here's how you need to organize. Here's a booklet that tells you what you can do until your 501c3 is restored. I'll have all the information, but they're going to need to get together, decide on a president, decide on a vice president, a treasurer, a secretary. They have all those articles of incorporation. And then we'll decide at that time if they feel comfortable filing for the 501c3 or if they want assistance with that. Just so you all know, there's two ways to get your 501c3 back. One is complicated and it's $250. It's basically the fine you're paying for not being compliant. And then there's an expedited version which costs $600. We've got what we saw in the accounts, Irene and I looked, it was like over 3,000 in the Friends account, and then we already have another close to 3,000 in the gifts account, correct?
About 20 something.
Yeah. And that's without my going through all the mail and seeing what other gifts we may have gotten. So we're gonna promote it. I wanna promote it for about a month of here's an organizational meeting, reorganizational meeting for the Friends of the Library, and then I'll host that meeting and give them all the materials that they have. And one of the other things, every library I've worked in where they had a large active Friends group, we had someone who was designated as liaison to the Friends. And I think that's something else that could be done with that position that's sort of overarching with everyone.
And I assume trustee and employees not allowed to be involved with the Friends.
Correct.
Like structure of board and that kind of stuff.
Right, they can't be officers though.
Right.
Mary Chamberlain and I were trustees in the past. Do you have contact with like their auditor? They had an auditor, Tom Troutman.
So I want to thank Virginia. I'm not thinking of Virginia. Virginia is one of our part-time people who works in Passport and at Lawrence Harbor. She's the one who found all of that. And she said there's a whole cabinet full of paperwork and files. So I'm assuming that their audits would be in there. But you're absolutely right. That information would be extremely helpful in filling out the financial portion of the application to restore the 501c3.
I think the last time I spoke to him, he lived in Old Bridge or Sayville. I had him in first grade. That's why I remember his name. But they did, they were organized enough to have a whole setup. This is
Guilford Public Library will be closing in
Chris,
private.
if I'm not mistaken,
Please exit
even
out the
if they
front
did
door.
it for a took
Drive
longer,
safely.
you still allowed to run it like they're not for profit.
Yeah, it's
So-
it's provisional operation during.
So
Why wait?
either way, wouldn't matter.
And it's super cool because they do a whole packet of here's what you can do expressly during that time. So I printed that out from the IRS, so I'll be able to just hand that to people.
Great,
Sounds good.
thank you.
Yeah, that was
That's good, yeah.
You should
Really
hook up
amazing.
with Anna at Silver Linings, because her members there would love to get involved in stuff like that.
Alright. And we've got people who are asking us about being volunteers. Volunteer programs are very labor intensive. And when people ask, right now we've got the teens volunteering, all these books out here are for the teen book sale. That's a very different thing. We don't have to do background screenings on teens the way we need to do for adult volunteers, so.
Yeah.
We'll get into that.
All right, thank you. So at this point, I would ask the public for comments, but seeing that we don't have any public, I'll just ask if anybody else had anything else they want to raise or bring up before we close. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
So moved.
Frank will second, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? No? Thank you.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
3 weeks.